Hi, and welcome to another episode of Piano TV, and today we are going to talk about major scales. Now, scales aren't something that everyone gets really excited about. A lot of people tend to find that scales are a bit of a drag, and this is a thing that I approach in my own studio, so I figured it would be something that would be good to talk about today. So I wanted to talk about why I think they're useful, but I also wanted to talk about how to build them and what the music theory formula is behind a major scale. So every single key on the piano can be the start of a major scale. So you can have a C major scale, a D flat major scale, D major scale, so on for all 12 of the different notes in an octave. So each of these scales has its own unique pattern of white keys and black keys, but they all have and follow the same rules when you plug them into the formula. So that's what I want to do today. And even if you still Google the notes of whatever scale you're trying to play and you don't use a formula, at least if you understand how it works and why it works, then I'm happy. So first of all, why are scales important? To me, there's a couple really good reasons. So first of all, they unlock all the information about each individual key on the piano. So for example, most of us are pretty familiar with the key of C because it's comfortable, it has no sharps and flats, that makes it easy to figure out and navigate. So if we see a song with a blank key signature like this, or if we start jamming with a friend who happens to be jamming in the key of C, we rejoice because it's easy. But then you get a song with something crazy like this with 5 sharps, or maybe your band plays in E flat instead of the standard tuning of E. So how well do you know the key of E flat major, which is this one, or the key of B major, which is this one and has 5 sharps? So when you play a piece with 5 sharps, are you constantly forgetting which notes you have to keep sharp, or are you comfortable navigating the key of B major? This is why I think scales are so important to learn, because by knowing scales, you can unlock all the secrets of each individual key. So when you see 5 sharps in a key signature, it's more like an old familiar friend as opposed to like some scary foreign thing. And then your fingers already know what to do. You already kind of like have an instinctive sense of where the sharps are going to be in that piece without having to like really think about it so much. The second reason I think that learning scales are so important is because they serve as a really straightforward way to develop finger coordination. So yes, learning music and learning different songs can help you build your finger coordination, but there's something about scales. They're nice and simple, and it's just like a repetitive pattern, right? So it's an easier way to develop the same coordination you would get by learning a bunch of different songs. And as you get more dexterous, you can keep making scales more difficult. You can, if you're starting playing at this speed, you can make it faster, or even faster. You can do multiple octaves, so instead of just going from here to here, you can go to 2 octaves or even 4 octaves to make it more exciting. You can play hands together, like so. Scales are also a really great way to practice with the metronome, especially if you have a tough time playing with the metronome, because the rhythm of a scale is super simple. It's just a straight beat, right? So I have it set to 100 here. So you could just do it in quarter notes where each note of the scale matches the tick, or you could do it in eighth notes where there's going to be 2 per tick. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. Or you could do it in triplets where there's 3 notes per tick. Or you could do it in 16th notes where there's 4 notes per tick. And so on and so on. I sometimes like to refer to learning scales as musical broccoli, where it's super good for you, but sometimes you get those picky eaters. And I think broccoli is amazing, both metaphorically and actual broccoli, but not everyone does. So I like to alter, like if you can just alter the way you think about scales instead of being this like dull, monotonous task, if you can at least understand the value in the scale, then that can be enough for your mind to maybe not even necessarily enjoy it, but like get through it and find meaning in it. Understanding the value of scales makes playing them easier to swallow. Trying to keep along that food analogy. So now we're going to switch gears to the music theory side of things. So all major scales share the same formula, which you can see on the screen here, and we'll explain in a second. This is where music and math sort of start to meet in the middle when you get into formulas and stuff like that. The formula, what it is a specific pattern of whole tones and semitones, and that's W for whole tones, H for half tones or semitones. Semitones are the smallest distance between 2 notes. So C to C sharp would be a semitone because there's literally no note in between them. E to F would also be a semitone, again, because there's no black key in between them. So a whole tone would be made up of 2 semitones. So this is where we go from C to D, would be a whole tone, right? Because we're kind of like bypassing that sharp in the middle. So that would be like 1 semitone equals a whole tone. Or E to F sharp would be a whole tone, because you're doing, again, 2 semitones. There's 1 semitone, and there's another semitone right there. So let's use C major as our example again, and you probably already know the key of C major and how to play C major scale, so this will be, I think, a good way to explain the formula. So I've already written out the C major scale, and what I've done is I've given every note of that scale a number, just 1 through 8, sequentially. So let's take a look at the formula that you can use to figure out basically any major scale. So you'll notice that there's the pattern W for whole tones, H for half tones. So the first thing that I like to look at, since there's a lot of whole tones, I mainly just worry about where the half tones are. So you'll notice that the half tones fall between the 3rd and 4th note and the 7th and 8th note. So over here on our scale, I'm just gonna mark those spots. So the 3rd and 4th note right here, which happens to be E and F, and then the 7th and 8th note right here, which happens to be B and C. So when I'm figuring out a scale and plugging in a scale into this formula, I will then go through and take a look and make sure everything's all good. So C to D is a whole tone. If you think about the keyboard, there's a sharp in between them. D to E is a whole tone, and then E to F, that is a half tone because there's no black keys between them on the keyboard. And then if you keep looking through it, whole tone, F to G, G to A to B, there's black key in between each of those letters. And then when we get to the very end, B to C, this is another spot on the keyboard where there aren't any black keys. So this is, even though there's no sharps or anything, this ends up being a half tone. So now that you have a basic understanding of how the formula works, what I want to do is let's apply this formula together, but we're going to pick a key that you might not be very familiar with. So not something easy like the key of C that most people already know. So let's figure out the key of A flat major. So the very first thing that I'm going to do, A flat major, it's got to start and end with an A flat. And then all we have to do is write one of each letter in between. So B, C, we're not worrying about sharps or flats at this point. D, E, oh, that's bad, E, F, G, A. So that should be eight notes. So I'm going to switch colors because, you know, makes it pretty. And I'm going to write down all of the numbers. So I gave each note of the scale a number. Now the reason I like to do that is because it makes it easier to go and figure out where the half tones have to be. So if we take a look at our formula, we have to have that half tone between 3 and 4. So I'm going to mark that off. And between 7 and 8. I don't want to cover up the keyboard. So as you can kind of see here, C to D, if you take a look, that's a whole tone. So we know we have some correcting to do in this scale. So instead of starting from here, you want to start back right from the very first letter, because say you adjust one of these notes, but then you're still probably going to have to go back and adjust these ones. So if we start right from the beginning, A flat to B, it has to be a whole tone. Now let's take a look. A flat is right here. B is all the way over here. So that's bigger than a whole tone. So we need to rectify this situation. We have to turn it into a B flat. So A flat to B flat is a whole tone. So I'm going to add a little flat there. So we need another whole tone, B flat to C, B flat, to C. That is a whole tone. So we don't have to touch that one at all. So now we have C to D. And as you can see, this is a whole tone. That's not cool. We need to turn this one into our half tone. So I'm going to pose a question to you, and I want you to think about it for a second here. Should we change, to make this a semitone, should we make C sharp or should we make D flat? So if you think that you have to make D flat, you are correct. Now the reason is, if we turn C into a sharp, C sharp to D is technically a semitone or a half tone, so that's good. But if I turn C sharp here, it's going to wreck the relationship B flat has over here, and that's all of a sudden going to be B flat to C sharp. Suddenly that's like way bigger than a whole tone. So we can't touch this C. We can only alter this D because that doesn't like ruin the precarious balance of the whole tones over on this side. Okay, so now we got our D flat. Let's keep moving forward. D flat to E. So D flat is right here. E is over here. That is way bigger. Well, not way bigger. It's just a half step bigger than a whole tone. So we got to dive back to that E flat, and that'll make D flat to E flat is a whole tone. E flat to F is a whole tone. So we're good there. We don't have to change anything. F to G. That's a whole tone. That's good. We don't have to change that. And now look, G to A flat right here. Is that a semitone? Yes, it is. So we're done editing it. And this should be our A flat major scale. So 1, 2, 3, 4 flats. So this is the last step to plugging in any random letter into a major scale formula and then figuring it out. I like to test it on the keyboard just to, make sure it actually sounds like it's supposed to sound. So let's go do that. So let's play through that A flat major scale. I'm just going to do it in the right hand with the 4 flats, make sure it sounds right. Yep, that sounds like a major scale. So if we take a look on the keyboard, just the pattern of whole tones and semitones, sometimes it's easier for people to visualize when you're actually at the piano. So I just want to show you this really quick. A flat to B flat is a whole tone. B flat to C is a whole tone. And then this, our third and fourth note, so 1, 2, 3, 4. This is where we have to have our semitone. C to D flat, very easy to visualize. Then we have whole tone, whole tone, whole tone, and then between 7 and 8, G to A flat, our last semitone. So to sum it up, a major scale is always going to have the exact same pattern of tones and semitones. And the semitones are always going to be between the third and fourth note and the 7th and 8th note. So if you want to just kind of like explore this formula and play around with it, you can try to figure out different scales on your own using the same process, first by writing out all the notes of the scale, just all the letters one by one, and then numbering them, marking where the semitones go, and then adjusting it one by one from the beginning to make sure that your pattern of whole tones and semitones is correct. And of course, testing it out on the piano to make sure it actually sounds like a scale. So that's all for today's video. Hopefully I've given you a little scale inspiration. That was weak. So have fun with your musical broccoli, and I will catch you guys next time. Do 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 do. Oh, please cut that out.